Disney's Pocahontas, listen to your heart. One day, an adventurous young woman named Pocahontas journeyed deep into the forest to visit Grandmother Willow, an ancient spirit. Pocahontas told the wise tree that she was troubled by a dream she kept having about a spinning arrow. It spins faster and faster until suddenly it stops. It seems to me the spinning arrow is pointing down your path, Grandmother Willow replied. But what is my path? Wondered Pocahontas. How am I ever going to find it? Grandmother Willow smiled warmingly. All around you are spirits, child, she said. They live in the earth, the water, the sky. If you listen, they will guide you. Later, Pocahontas thought about what Grandmother Willow had said. In the distance, she saw something. It was a ship filled with settlers from England. The next day, Pocahontas spotted a man exploring the forest. His name was John Smith, and like the other men on the ship, he had sailed to this new land in search of gold. Pocahontas was curious about this man. She had never seen anyone like him before. So she followed him through the woods. Suddenly he seemed to disappear behind a waterfall. Pocahontas crept out from her hiding place cautiously. Smith jumped through the waterfall and came face to face with the young woman. The two stared at each other for a while. Smith had never seen anyone so beautiful. He moved closer, but Pocahontas was frightened and ran away. Wait, please, Smith called as he ran after her. I'm not going to hurt you. Pocahontas hesitated. Leaves swirled around the pair as Smith moved closer and offered her his hand. Who are you? He asked. I'm Pocahontas, she replied, as she took his outstretched hand. When they touched, neither one wanted to let go. In her heart, Pocahontas knew that there was something special about this strange man. Together they laughed at Makiko, Pocahontas' mischievous raccoon friend, who rummaged through Smith's bag looking for food. Pocahontas began to sing as she led John Smith through the forest. She showed him all the parts of nature, animals, plants, and the wind. The people were alive and connected to each other. They watched the gentleness of a mother bear with her cubs. They listened to wolves cry and saw eagles fly to the top of a skymore tree. John Smith began to realize that his people had much to learn. With Pocahontas as his teacher, he could hear the voices of the mountains and even see colors in the wind. He held her hand and gazed into her brown eyes. Suddenly, drums echoed throughout the forest. Pocahontas looked alarmed. What is that? What is it? Asked John Smith. The drums? They mean trouble, she said. I shouldn't be here. Please don't leave, he urged. I'm sorry I have to go, she said, and ran off. Back at the village, Pocahontas' father, Chief Powhatan, warned her to stay close by. Now is not the time to be running off, he said. He didn't want Pocahontas to get hurt if fighting broke out between the settlers and the Indians. Yes, father, said Pocahontas. Later, when Pocahontas and her friend Nakoma were gathering corn, John Smith appeared. "Please don't say anything," Pocahontas whispered to her friend before leaving with Smith. Nakoma was too shocked to respond. She kept quiet but felt uncomfortable as she watched the two figures disappear into the evening shadows. She had been warned that the settlers were dangerous and was worried about her friend. Pocahontas led Smith to Grandmother Willow. "Hello, John Smith," the tree said. John Smith's mouth dropped open. "Pocahontas, that tree is talking to me," he said. "Then you should talk back," Pocahontas said, smiling. Grandmother Willow looked kindly into Smith's blue eyes. "He has a good soul," she told Pocahontas. "And he's handsome, too." John Smith laughed. "Oh, I like her," he said. Pocahontas was glad the tree spirit approved. After John Smith had left, Grandmother Willow told her that she might have found her path. Later, when Pocahontas met up with Nakoma, her friend pleaded with her not to see John Smith anymore. "If you go out there, you'll be turning your back on your own people," Nakoma warned. "I'm trying to help my people," said Pocahontas. "Pocahontas, please," Nakoma begged. "You are my best friend. I don't want you to get hurt." "I won't. I know what I'm doing," replied Pocahontas as she went back into the woods. But Nakoma wasn't convinced. Concerned about her friend's safety, she sent an Indian warrior named Kakum to look for Pocahontas in the woods. Kakum soon found Pocahontas and Smith. The warrior attacked Smith. All of a sudden, another settler showed up and killed Kakum. Furious, other warriors arrived and took John Smith prisoner. He was sentenced to die. The next morning, that night, Pocahontas visited John Smith. "I'm so sorry," she told him, crying. "It would have been better if we never met. None of this would have happened." "Pocahontas, look at me," he said tenderly. "I'd rather die tomorrow than live 100 years without knowing you." Pocahontas left and went to see Grandmother Willow. "I feel so lost," she told the spirit tree. Meeko's ears perked up. The raccoon brought Pocahontas a compass he had taken from John Smith's bag. The arrow on it began to spin. "It's the arrow from your dream," the tree spirit observed. "It was pointing to him," Pocahontas said. "You know your path, child," said Grandmother Will. "Now follow it." Pocahontas ran back to the village. Just as John Smith was about to be killed, she stepped in front of him. "If you kill him, you have to kill me too," she declared to her father. "This is where the path of hatred has brought us. This is the path I choose. What will yours be?" Everyone stared in stunned silence. Finally, inspired by Pocahontas, the chief ordered the release of John Smith. But the fighting was not over quite yet. When one of the settlers shot at Pocahontas' father, Smith threw himself in front of the chief and took the bullet himself. In order to have his wound treated, he had to return to London. Smith looked at Pocahontas. "Come with me," he asked. She turned to her father for guidance. "You must choose your own path," the chief said. As Pocahontas watched the settlers and Indians began to share food, she knew what her path must be. "I'm needed here," she decided. "Then I'll stay with you," Smith replied. Pocahontas shook her head. "No, you have to go back," she told him. "But I can't leave you," he said sadly. "You never will," she told him. "No matter what happens, I'll always be with you." Then she kissed him goodbye forever. As the ship set sail, Pocahontas stood atop a cliff. She was proud that she had listened to her heart, even if it was the hardest thing she had ever done. The end.